Chilling new details, the singer David Burke faces a judge in the murder case of Celeste Rivas Hernandez. The hearing happening 1 year to the day the young victim was last seen alive.
Your Honor, from the media reports, apparently there have been 4 months of secret grand jury proceedings. We believe that Mr. Burke is entitled at the earliest opportunity to an open preliminary hearing and the proceedings not be done in secret. So we are asking for a preliminary hearing to be set at the earliest possible date.
Prosecutors are accusing Berg of killing Celeste Rivas Hernandez to cover up their sexual relationship, allegedly starting when she was just 12 years old, revealing in court that David's phone contained a significant amount of child pornography.
Evidence will be the witness testimony, the documents, and different types of admissible testimony that we will admit into court in the prosecution, and if it leads to the eventual trial of Mr. Berg.
Your Honor, we believe the actual evidence will show David Burke did not murder Celeste Rivas Hernandez, nor was he the cause of her death.
To convince a jury of 12 people beyond a reasonable doubt that each and every one of these charges is true, as well as the special allegations and circumstances that have been alleged.
And we would like to be able to have the evidence come into the light of day at the earliest opportunity in order to establish that. We're asking for April 23rd as a 3 of 10, Your Honor.
Anything from the people?
We'll be very happy to put on the evidence that we've collected in this case in the last several months.
Thank you. So the matter will be set. Plea of not guilty has been entered on behalf of Mr. Burke. The matter will be set.
Let me tell you where this case like this is really decided. It's not the arrest. It's not the headlines. It's the timeline. Because right now, David is charged with first-degree murder with special circumstances, of all places in California. That's the highest level charge you could bring. But here's the part that should stop you out there in Hill Nation. Prosecutors aren't just saying someone died. They're saying that this may have been planned, it was aggravated, and possibly done to silence a witness, which I disagree with, but we'll talk about that later. And let's go ahead and get to the part where it's even sadder. It may not even be close to the truth, but we're not just looking at a homicide. We may be looking at a failure somewhere in the system.
This is the Hill of Justice.
I'm Jerome Hill, former police officer and state investigator, and with me is retired Sheriff Victor Hill. Let me take this moment to go ahead and say, I see a lot of you already stepping in like real investigators from the comments and questions from the last video, which was hugely successful. You're asking all the right questions. You're catching the details that others miss, and that matters. A lot of you are super sleuths in your own right, and it shows. Keep that mindset. Stay inquisitive. So this is where what we're going to talk about this charge and what it really means. So we're going to slow it down in the right way. The first-degree murder means that intent, deliberation, and premeditation, all of that combined, makes this alone a very serious case. But when you add special circumstances, now you're in a different category entirely. Now the prosecutors are saying this wasn't just intentional. It was aggravated in a specific way. And the concerns in this case, based on what's being alleged so far, is he was lying in wait. He was trying to go ahead and gain financially through this. And the murder of Celeste as a witness in an investigation. Those are not small add-ons. Those are things that elevate a case to life without parole or even the death penalty exposure. So from the jump, this is not a basic case. You've heard this, brother. What are some of your thoughts on that?
You know, what I'm curious about is how did they say he was going to benefit financially from this?
If she was to go ahead and tell, that would crumble his music empire.
Okay.
That's it. You know, which I'm not totally with. And obviously, what I'm also not totally with is the fact that she's supposed to be killed because she was going to be a witness to an investigation. I think that you muddy the waters like that. They can go ahead and clean this up. I wouldn't have done that, but that's
What investigation was she been a witness to? Were they clear about that?
her own sexual assault because she was 13 years old.
Okay.
She would have been a witness to that.
Okay.
But they hadn't spoken to her yet. But because the reason is because she's no longer with us.
Let me ask you this. Was there an investigation going on before her murder?
No. This was a missing
about this going on before.
This was a missing persons case.
Right.
So
all right. So let me give the stark reality. Okay, first of all, as a former sheriff and former homicide detective, I'm always going to be on the side of the law. But here's the reality. There's a dangerous game that's played in courts. And, it's interesting because when you get up on the stand, they ask you to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God. But there's a lot of lying that goes on and permitted on both sides. And usually it's without any accountability whatsoever. So I've had the lawyers tell me that in law school, they're told, okay, a lot of cases are about who can tell the best story. Well, that don't sit right with me because a story is a lie. It's not supposed to be who can tell the best story. What is the facts of the case? So if the facts of the case is whether it's involuntary manslaughter, or murder, of course, California reads a little different. There's 3 types when people kill people. There's one where it's premeditated, like they're alleging here. Then there's others was in the heat of passion. You didn't wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to kill somebody, but you got into an argument, something, whatever. You walked in on something you shouldn't have seen and you overreacted. And then, of course, there's involuntary manslaughter where it was an accident, but your negligence caused the death. But prosecutors are trained to make the highest case, even if it's not there. And that's where it gets dangerous. And that's why they lose cases that they should win. And that's when you get into manufacturing evidence and manufacturing testimony and making up a narrative to fit a case to convince a jury. I think that the truth is usually good enough. If a person, if it's a solid murder case and you got one, you got one. But to create this elaborate story and make a soap opera because you want to win so bad or you want to make some impression on TV, that's where they go wrong. And we've seen famous murder cases lost like that.
Yeah. So what we're going to do, we're going to turn this into the investigative process, how it should be walked. Because cases don't start with charges. They start with uncertainty. And this begins as a missing persons case from the get-go. And from there, timelines get built. And we have to go ahead and extract digital evidence. That gets pulled. We take a look at patterns. We analyze what those patterns look like. And then at some point, a discovery is made. And once the body is found, everything shifts. And now it becomes what happened, when did it happen, and who can be tied to it. And all these decisions, and every decision is about building a timeline that holds up in court. And this is where we're at this point in time. So let's walk this step by step. Okay.
Sure.
So the first step is the last contact that Celeste had. When was the victim last confirmed alive? We got to build that timeline first, right? Who spoke to her? That becomes your anchor point. And then, the closest people who are around to her, someone it had to be in that moment that could have spoken to her. And more importantly, did they become part of this investigation, which most always certainly becomes the case, right? So you have that. Then you have the digital trail. And that's where the investigators go digital, like myself, and we'll take a look at the phones. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the messages, the location. We're going to look at the data that's involved with that. We're looking for movement. We're looking for the communication changes in behavior, because that's where the digital evidence will go ahead and it doesn't just show up, but it shows what they were doing. So we got those 2 options out there, right? So then we have the Tesla. And we've made this point before. If you have not seen our video from a few months back when this was breaking the first time, The Tesla by itself may be the gold mine, how this all gets solved. This is where the car went. And we're going to find out where the car went and when, the GPS tracks to that, the routes, the stops, the timestamp trips, even the charging sessions. This was a high-end Tesla. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at the parking durations. It's going to answer these questions. Was the car near the last known location? When was it moved after the alleged incident? Was it abandoned and when? Who likely had the car? Because you would have to have a key card, some type of phone key usage logs, how opening up the doors, closing the doors. These are all the lock, the unlock times. These will help answer which key unlocked the car at what critical times. Did the access patterns change around the incident window? That's what we want to find out. We can even find out the driving behavior at key moments, the speed, the acceleration, the braking events. We're going to find out the gear change. We're going to go ahead and find out who had seat occupancy and when. And this is where all this helps. Was the car driven erratically? Did it stop in a space or a place that is consistent with disposal of the body or even the transfer of it? The camera footage, we talked about that, remember? And
I remember.
That was part of the Sentry mode that these high-end Teslas have. The dash cam clips that they go ahead and have in different angles of the car. These are event-triggered recordings of motion and impact. And this is what these high-end Teslas can do. You can place people at the vehicle with the accessories they have and show the loading and unloading events. They can capture faces, the clothing, the objects. But the limitation is of the Tesla, what we discovered was the footage can be overwritten if it was not preserved. But it's exceptional for this timeline reconstruction that I want to talk about.
What's the time? What's the footage time to be over? How long does the footage stay before it's overwritten?
It didn't say specifically. We need to find that out for sure. And I'm sure that the investigators have put this together, because go
ahead.
One of the things that this timeline, if you reconstruct it, if you want to say hypothetically, the car left the location at location A at let's just say 8:12 p.m. It arrived at location B at 8:37 p.m. The doors open up at 8:39. The trunk is opened at 8:41. Then the car remains stationary for 22 minutes. That's the kind of sequence that I'm giving everyone theoretically that would be powerful in court, especially if it matches with David's phone location data, surveillance cameras that we've seen elsewhere, license plate readers, and witness statements. It is.
How long was that car there before they found her body?
That car was there for, I want to say, a few weeks. And it went to towing yard. And that's when one of the attendants had smelled the odor. And then it turned into where they discovered her in the front portion, the trunk of the Tesla.
So what I'm curious about, Jerome, is like I remember we used to have a camera system where it was good for 30 days. But every 30 days it researched. And I just wonder on the Tesla, what was that? Because if it passed that time and then it was erased, then all of that good data you're talking about doesn't exist.
Well, the visual will. The other stuff will keep on going.
Right. The visual won't exist. But the other stuff, that continues no matter what.
Yeah, that will
no matter what.
Yeah, it's preserved no matter what.
There's the time the door opens, whatever like that.
Right. That all is stays in the Sentry. What doesn't is the video loop.
Right. Right. That still presents a problem because if, again, but like you're saying with the triangulation with the phone, that's very, very important. But if all you got is a door opening and a door closing, you don't have visual who opened that door, who closed it or whatever, then it's very, very important to place him at the scene and place him there. I'm not saying it's insurmountable. They've got something, but Obviously,
I could make a case if he had his cell phone. I ask you, and we put him in the box, right? Say, have you had your phone with you at all times? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. So if that's it, nobody else had your phone? Yes. No one else had your phone. Then if I could put in the timeline that the phone was by the car during the disappearance, and you saying that the car was stolen or whatever, you got a problem.
I get what you're saying, but let me tell you what makes me wonder. You know, the last time we did that show has been quite a bit of time.
Mm-hmm.
So if they had video of him dumping a body in a trunk or putting a large bag in a trunk or something like that, I don't think it would have took this long to secure an arrest warrant.
Right. I'll go with that logic. Right.
Right. So that means that they really had to take their time and put this case together. And just what I'm hoping and praying is, I hope that that's what they did. They took their time and they put a case together and collected evidence, not created evidence, not get creative like we know a lot of these prosecutors do. But
I'm glad you brought that up.
Because exactly. Because we're in I don't want to say we're in a new age now. I don't think that prosecutors just started lying 3 years ago. But I can tell you this, it depends on the school of thought I came from and how I was trained and where I was trained at. They didn't care if we knew who did the murder or not. If we didn't have the evidence, we didn't have the evidence. And I can tell you right now, I know of 3 murders where there's no doubt in my mind who did the killing, but the evidence did not exist. So under that school of thought, I was trained, if there's no evidence, we got to wait until we get evidence. Hopefully that'll happen. Hopefully somebody will come forward. Maybe there'll be some strange confession that was given that was on tape that he didn't realize he was taped or whatever. But we were taught not to move forward with a case unless the evidence exists. Okay.
Talking about that.
Right. But go ahead.
No, here's the question I want to ask you. So you never had enough evidence where you were certain about this person or that person doing it or these group of people doing it. You never presented it to the DA and they took it from there and said, we have enough and we're going to make a circumstantial evidentiary case? See, that's where it gets real interesting. Remember, a DA can indict anybody for anything. Mm-hmm.
That's the maximum you can indict a ham sandwich. A DA can go in and tell a grand jury anything and get anybody indicted. So, but now, is it enough evidence in order to get a conviction, or is there any real evidence? Now, usually they do that and don't have to worry about it because 90% of the people are going to take a plea anyway. So a lot of them roll the dice and say, hey, let's just get the indictment, they'll plea and go on. And, ask me how I know about that. But here's the thing. The grand jury thing is so shaky. When you tell me someone's indicted, that doesn't tell me that you have evidence or a good case. It just tells me that the DA went in there and told the grand jury what they wanted and only brought certain people in there and fed them exactly what they want. There is no defense in a grand jury, only what the DA says. So it's easy to do that, but where I was trained, if you don't have evidence and, circumstantial evidence, I'm not saying that you can't convict someone on circumstantial evidence. That's done all the time, but it's hardcore circumstantial evidence. You hear a gunshot, a man runs outside the door and he has a gun in his hand. Well, there's no video that he killed the person, but you eliminate, there was nobody else in the house. He did run out with the gun. That gun comes back to it. That's circumstantial evidence. That's not direct evidence. No one saw the person kill him, but that's pretty, if there's such a thing, direct circumstantial evidence. But when you don't have that and you put a case together, you're going to need more than that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. And I think that this case really, falls in to where there's a gap. And that's what there's going to be, because there is a gap. And that's where the period where nobody sees her and nobody hears from her and there's no confirmed activity. That's where the crime really sits, right there in that gap. And if they can't go ahead and answer that, And the longer the gap is going to make it that much more pressure on the prosecution and that much more pressure for the investigators to explain it. It's almost like an employment gap. Why weren't you employed for the past 2 years? Well, it's going to be a problem if you're trying to get a job. You have to explain that. Well, same thing with us. We have to go ahead and explain, hey, guys, where was her likely area that she was at, and how do you know this? And it creates too much what we call reasonable doubt, and that's all you need to go ahead and have this either a hung jury or not guilty.
Let me ask you this. The autopsy, what was the cause of death?
Here's the big part of it. That is sealed. Okay. We do know that she was dismembered and she had been dead for quite a long time. Their guesstimation is 4 months. So the manner, we just know the manner of death is a homicide. We just don't know how that was.
So no
they believe it's a sharp object.
Blunt, stab wounds.
They do believe it's something sharp that was able to, obviously with the dismemberment.
Okay.
So that is what they're hanging their hat on. And they just argued today, the prosecution and the defense, at some point in time, the prosecution did not want it. They wanted it sealed, but they introduced today that it can be unsealed and that the defense can go ahead and peruse through it for discovery.
That's going to be interesting. So, okay, we know that that it takes a sharp object to dismember a body.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that's the cause of death. So it's going to be interesting to see what that autopsy says. Because, is it blunt trauma? Is it strangulation? Is it a gunshot wound? There's only one reason to dismember a body. And that's because it's hard to carry a complete body. So people dismember it so they can carry it. I had a case like that back in Clayton County where it was a 9-piece dismemberment. The head, the arms, the legs, and then the legs were cut in half and the arms were cut in half.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because it's easier to hide or move something around. Trying to move a whole body around is very difficult. So, but just because a person was dismembered that way doesn't mean they were actually killed that way.
Correct.
Right.
So we are looking at 2 bags with body parts in it.
Right.
And, so of course you got to go ahead and answer those questions. And of course the time of death, this is everything. If the timeline of death matches the suspect's movements, that strengthens the case. But if it doesn't, that creates doubt. And in court, doubt is everything. And that's how things get, tossed aside.
Right.
So we can take a look at, the forensic pressure that you speak of. That's going to be the test of this case, because that's where it either is going to hold up or it completely breaks.
Why did they seal it? Did they say why?
I don't know the real answer to that. And I think that the prosecution was very coy about that. There seemed to be a fight between the homicide detectives and the medical examiner. The medical examiner, I can give you what I know about the case. The medical examiner explained that they could not determine how she died. And thus that presented a problem. And the homicide detectives were like, well, we have an idea. Well, the medical examiners didn't want to sign off on that. That's what it initially appeared to be at first. So it's that homegrown law enforcement fight inside that we do often.
I know, but let me tell you the problem with that. I've seen a lot of odd behavior. I've seen situations where they're doing drugs and there's an overdose. Okay, they didn't kill the person, it's an overdose. But then there's a panic because, my God, we don't want anyone to know we're all doing drugs and they overdose. So they do strange things like take the body and dump it somewhere, or we didn't have it, but there's been cases where in order to get rid of the body, they do some type of dismemberment or some type of trying to see if they could cremate the body, which is very hard to do if you don't know what you're doing. And those cases exist because they panic. And even though they didn't murder anybody, they're afraid of the consequences of what surrounded the death. And it makes it kind of complicated. And that's when you got to be, that's when you need a good medical examiner or whatever like that. Because like you say, let's say they tried to burn the body. Well, if there's no smoke in the lungs, then the person, of course, was dead before the fire, because if they actually died by fire, of course, they're going to inhale smoke. So there's certain things that just, that you got to look for. And that cause of death is very, very, very important. And see, that's where this is going to get complicated, because suppose this was a situation where she died and they already knew, okay, hey, we got a problem because we got a missing 13, 14-year-old. Well, first of all, those are serious charges right there.
Right there. I'm glad you brought that up.
Exactly. Because we're talking all kinds of stuff now. We're talking child molestation. We're talking child trafficking or sex trafficking or whatever like that. You shouldn't have a 13-year-old with you anyway.
No. And there's evidence of him with her on video.
Right.
What are you doing?
So that's where it gets interesting, because let's say hypothetically she died of something else. Well, now he has a body of a 13 or 14-year-old that he shouldn't be with anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a possibility that, okay, well, we didn't kill her, but we got to find something to do with her body, because they're going to be, okay, well, what were you doing with a 13-year-old anyway? So I hope that, again, prosecutors and investigators, sometimes they want to win and they're willing to do things to win that cause them to lose. I just hope they're not building a case on a theory and building it on facts, because I can tell you right now, there's enough there. It may not be the charge they want, but if you got videotape of her and him together while she's alive, we already got a charge right there, because she's a missing 13, 14-year-old that no one has seen, no one knows where they're at. That's interference with custody right there. Mm-hmm. So you got some charges already. But, a lot of times these prosecutors, well, we just got to have the murder charge. We just got to have this.
Right. That's throwing mud to the wall. We're going to charge you with everything that we have, the kitchen sink, and hope that something out there sticks.
Right. But that right there will stick. I mean, what's a 13-year-old doing with an adult if that's not your child and she's already reported missing? But I'm sure have they made any charges like that? Or is it strictly a murder charge?
No. There's a sexual assault charge on this too.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is going to be for the win. If I'm going to go ahead and predict anything, that seems to be the solid case, underlining portion of the case. Could they prove the murder? Sure. If it depends on the evidence, whatever they got. But that is a no-brainer.
How did they prove the sexual assault?
Well, because this is how they went about it. Her parents, the last known correspondence with her was like she had a boyfriend, and his name was David. They just didn't know who David's name was. You see her interactions playfully with him on video, and it had some overtones of a relationship in that case. I don't know specifically if they had something even more so. They did seize his computer.
Okay. Right. And there could be video of them involving sex acts, and then you got him just like that. So,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So,
yeah. I guess
pretty confident with that.
Right. So, it's just interesting because there's a lot. It's going to be interesting once Discovery comes out and we can all see Discovery. Then we'll know just how strong the case is or how circumstantial it is. And hopefully we won't see how weak it is. So, but that's what the case is. But definitely, it's very, very, very interesting because he put himself in a very interesting situation. Let's say hypothetically somebody else did it or whatever.
I wanted to talk about that.
Right. But the fact that you have a 13-year-old in your possession who's missing and no one knows where they're at, And they're not going to school. They're not doing whatever. Like I said, that's a huge problem in itself.
And
That's
people saw her with him, friends of
exactly
his.
right.
You're
And let me
cool.
tell you that can get you 20 or 30 years on its own.
Right. And a little bit what you were talking about is eliminating alternative suspects. And you have to, that's part of the investigation too, that a lot of people
Right.
don't talk about. You got to go ahead and eliminate that. This is where, you have to rule out anyone with access to the vehicle, anyone who's connected to the victim, any third party involvement. If another plausible suspect exists, then it creates reasonable doubt. And that gets a case thrown out too.
Right.
But this sexual assault portion of it, that's going to be a hard one.
Yeah, well, let me tell you this. The prosecution has everything lined up for them. And let me tell you why. I don't know how strong or weak their case is about proven murder or whatever. But I'm going to tell you this. You talking about going before a jury, and you got a 13-year-old child that's missing and ends up dead and dismembered. And she shouldn't have been with you anyway.
And he's in your vehicle.
Exactly. So even if he didn't kill her, even if it's some odd possibility that somebody else did it and put it in his car and he had no idea,
Mm-hmm.
he's going to eat this one. Because at the end of the day, the contributing circumstances is, I can tell you, a jury, juries are unpredictable, but I'm talking about just human nature. There's very few people who are tolerant about killing children or sex trafficking children or something like that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah. I mean, this case is not going to really hang on what people think. Of course, it's going to be decided what can be proven step by step through the timeline. And right now, there are two things happening at once: a very serious charge and a very serious question. If the victim was a potential witness, as they're trying to make it seem like, because she was sexually assaulted.
I'm going to argue with you. Right. When you're dealing with juries, you're mostly dealing with emotions than you are dealing with logic. Right.
Sure.
It's not like they're trained investigators or whatever like that. You're talking about a 13-year-old that's missing, that's found dismembered, that there's innuendos that there's a relationship or whatever like that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, that's but I'm getting to that point.
Right. It's going to be hard to, there may be some facts out there that, hey, listen, this doesn't add up, but it's going to be a hard mountain to climb because you already have this, like I said, a lot of these cases are decided on emotions more so than logic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they tell attorneys is who can tell the best story and who can get the emotions going to a jury. And that's why you see so many, I'm not saying it's going to be the case with this, because in this case, something is obviously wrong. A 13-year-old shouldn't be with an adult. But that's why you see so many false convictions.
Right.
Because a lot of people, it's based on emotions. Well, he shouldn't have been there anyway, or whatever like that. You'd be surprised the studies on juries or whatever. Well, I don't like the way, I think he's arrogant or something like that or whatever, But you got somebody in possession of somebody's child that's missing, and they turn out like this, that's going to be a hard defense.
Right. And to the point that I was trying to make was, you got some serious charges, but you got a serious question that he has to answer. And it was, why didn't you protect her? Because if that answer isn't clear, then this case doesn't raise questions about one person. It's going to raise, why did you do it? Why didn't your friends go ahead and do it? This would be a system breakdown. And he was supposed to be there to protect them. And you're right. What's really going to be happening is the jury isn't going to be sympathetic to that. They're going to be like, why didn't you?
And then the defense is going to have to also make up their mind on something else too. Are they going to let him take the stand to defend himself? Because there's not, even if you came up and said, I didn't do it, someone else did it. Again, there's going to be questions. Why was this girl with you? Why didn't you return her to her family? What was your intentions? Why was she going to school? What were your plans with her? Did you ever have sex with her? Did you whatever like that? You know, he getting on the stand would be a field day for any prosecutor.
You ain't never lie.
Right. And then if he doesn't take the stand, I'm sure there's going to be, what's your word? A plethora of witnesses to condemn or whatever like that, whatever that word, I probably mispronounced it. But no, I think no matter what, I hope they did a great job or whatever like that. But this is one of these cases where even if they did a sloppy job, even if they come up with some wild theory, a lot of this is emotions anyway. And I can tell you right now, the country was already emotional when they heard a 13-year-old girl was dismembered.
Right, right. This is one of these cases where you can go ahead and shoot for the moon, but if you miss, you still got the stars. And this is what's going to go ahead and happen to them. So we're going to go ahead and land it right there.
Yeah.
For many of you here at the Hill Nation, you guys are supporting, you're liking, subscribing, commenting. Please continue to keep on doing it. And let us know what you think about this case. Was there anything that me and Vic missed? And certainly, we're not above reproach. So please,
Yeah.
you know,
And this
right
is
there in the
we're going to have
comments.
to revisit as it goes along, especially when a trial comes.
For sure. We'll come back and do this case again. And
Absolutely.
certainly, let's just go ahead and do that. Until later, we'll talk to you soon enough.
This is the Hill of Justice.